You're not going to see this tornado. It is wrapped in rain. The only indication you're going to get, if you still have power, is you're going to get power flashes. You're going to hear trees snapping outside. It is going to be significant. You are going to hear this tornado.
On April 27, 2011, a tornado began forming in rural Mississippi that would travel faster than most cars on the highway. By the time it crossed into Alabama that afternoon, the storm was moving at speeds that made traditional tornado warnings almost useless. This was not a case of people ignoring sirens or taking foolish risks in the face of obvious danger. The Hackleburg Phil Campbell tornado moved so fast that it reached neighborhoods within minutes of warnings being issued, leaving residents with impossible choices and almost no time to act. What meteorologists discovered about this storm's forward motion would force them to confront an uncomfortable truth about the limits of their warning systems. The tornado traveled at highway speeds for over 130 miles, and even those who reacted immediately to the first alerts found themselves with seconds, not minutes, to find shelter. This is the story of a storm that broke every rule people depend on to survive. The supercell thunderstorm that would spawn the Hackleburg Phil Campbell tornado formed over eastern Mississippi around 3 o'clock in the afternoon on April 27th, embedded within one of the most violent weather systems ever recorded across the American South. The parent storm was moving northeast at nearly 70 miles per hour, driven by powerful upper-level winds that meteorologists had been tracking for days. When the tornado first touched down in Marion County, Mississippi, it was already moving faster than most people drive on country roads. The National Weather Service issued tornado warnings as the circulation tightened and intensified, but the storm's exceptional forward speed meant those warnings had to cover vast areas in rapid succession. By 4 o'clock, the tornado had crossed the state line into Alabama, and its forward motion showed no signs of slowing. By the way, my name is Andrew. If you like the content I'm making here and want to see more, please go and hit that subscribe button. It helps out a lot. Thanks, and back to the video. Residents in Franklin County found themselves in the path of an EF5 tornado that was approaching their communities at the speed of traffic on an interstate highway. Within minutes of crossing into Alabama, the tornado began displaying the characteristics that would make it one of the most devastating storms in modern American history. The circulation expanded to over a mile wide while maintaining forward speeds between 60 and 70 miles per hour, creating a scenario that defied conventional tornado survival wisdom. Emergency managers in Franklin County had received the tornado warning at 4:15 in the afternoon, but the storm was already bearing down on the town of Hackleburg by 4:20. The mathematics of the situation were brutal and simple. A tornado moving at 65 miles per hour covers more than a mile every minute, meaning residents had perhaps 2 to 3 minutes between the sounding of sirens and the arrival of winds of 200 miles per hour. Many people later reported hearing the warning sirens and the tornado's roar almost simultaneously. Those who ran to their cars, hoping to evacuate, found themselves attempting to outrun a storm that was traveling faster than they could drive on winding rural roads. The tornado struck Hackleburg with the full intensity of an EF5 storm just after 4:20 in the afternoon, leaving behind destruction so complete that entire neighborhoods were reduced to bark concrete slabs. James Peterson, a maintenance worker at the local school, was leaving the building when he heard the sirens and looked southwest to see a wall of darkness approaching faster than seemed possible. He sprinted back inside and made it to an interior hallway seconds before the building began to disintegrate around him. Peterson survived because the school's construction was slightly more robust than residential buildings, but he later said the time between seeing the tornado and feeling the building shake was less than 30 seconds. Sarah Mitchell, a young mother picking up her children from a friend's house, heard the sirens while loading car seats and decided to shelter in the friend's bathroom instead of attempting to drive home. The house was completely destroyed, but the interior bathroom walls held together just enough to create a survivable void where she and 3 children waited as the tornado passed overhead. The storm moved so fast that the entire passage of the mile-wide circulation took less than 2 minutes. Those 2 minutes erased decades of construction and claimed 17 lives in Hackleburg alone. 8 miles northeast of Hackleburg, residents of Phil Campbell received approximately 4 additional minutes of warning time because the tornado was tracking northeast. Even those extra minutes proved insufficient for many families. The tornado remained EF5 in intensity as it approached the town, and its forward speed stayed near 70 miles per hour, giving people a window of 5 to 7 minutes between the first sirens and the impact. Danny Wright, a mechanic who lived on the south side of Phil Campbell, heard the warnings on his weather radio and made the decision to load his elderly parents into his pickup truck to try to drive north out of the storm's path. Wright later told investigators that he managed to travel nearly 2 miles before the tornado's outer circulation caught up to his truck on Highway 460. The vehicle was thrown more than 100 yards into a field, and Wright was the only survivor. His experience illustrated the cruel mathematics of the storm. Even those who reacted immediately and who made reasonable decisions found themselves overtaken by a tornado that moved as fast as they could drive. The exceptional forward speed of the Hackleburg Phil Campbell tornado exposed fundamental limitations in tornado warning systems that meteorologists had never been forced to confront on such a scale. Traditional tornado warnings assume that people will have 10 to 15 minutes between the issuance of a warning and the arrival of damaging winds, providing sufficient time to move to interior rooms, gather family members, and assume protective positions. This tornado compressed that timeline to 2 or 3 minutes in many areas, creating what emergency managers later termed temporal compression. The concept is simple but devastating. When a tornado moves fast enough, the traditional advice of seeking shelter in place becomes the only viable option, but the speed also means that many people are caught in situations where proper shelter is not immediately available. The storm's mile-wide circulation meant that even areas outside the tornado's center experienced winds strong enough to destroy mobile homes and damage conventional structures, eliminating the possibility of simply moving perpendicular to the storm's path. The aftermath of the tornado revealed the extent to which survival had depended not on preparation or quick thinking, but on the structural integrity of whatever building people happened to be in when the storm arrived. Search and rescue teams working through the wreckage of Hackleburg and Phil Campbell found that well-constructed homes with interior rooms and bathrooms provided some protection. Mobile homes and older structures offered virtually no survivable space. The tornado moved so fast that many victims were found in hallways and interior rooms where they had sheltered correctly according to all standard safety guidelines. The storm simply exceeded the protective capacity of normal residential construction. Teams reported finding areas where the destruction was so complete that concrete foundations had been swept clean, with debris scattered across multiple counties by winds that meteorologists later estimated exceeded 210 miles per hour at peak intensity. The Hackleburg Phil Campbell tornado remained on the ground for another hour after devastating Phil Campbell. It eventually traveled 132 miles before finally dissipating in Tennessee. The storm maintained forward speeds above 50 miles per hour for its entire path, making it one of the fastest moving violent tornadoes ever recorded. The final death toll reached 72 people along the tornado's path, with dozens more injured and hundreds of families left homeless. In the weeks following the disaster, the National Weather Service and emergency management agencies began studying the implications of high-speed tornadoes for warning systems and survival strategies. The uncomfortable conclusion was that certain meteorological scenarios could produce tornadoes that move too fast for conventional warning and response protocols to be effective. The storm had not been unpredictable or unwarned, but it had moved fast enough to render warnings nearly useless in practical terms. The lessons from April 27th forced meteorologists and emergency managers to acknowledge that preparation and quick response, while still essential, cannot guarantee survival when nature produces storms that operate at the extreme end of the possible. Communities in tornado-prone areas began investing more heavily in underground shelters and reinforced safe rooms, recognizing that above-ground shelter might not be sufficient when facing the most violent storms. Weather services started experimenting with impact-based warnings that emphasized the speed of approaching tornadoes, not just their intensity. The broader implication remained unsettling. There are scenarios where the mathematics of storm motion and human reaction time create situations where survival depends more on luck and shelter quality than on any decision people can make in the moment. The Hackleburg Phil Campbell tornado moved too fast to outrun, too wide to avoid, and too violent for conventional structures to withstand, leaving those in its path to face the ultimate test of man versus nature with almost no time to prepare. Thanks for watching today's video. If you want to see more content like this, go ahead and click that video on your screen. This was StormForge, and as always, thanks for watching.